This festive season hasn't brought much cheer for Bill Chen. His restaurant usually throws around a dozen corporate parties before the Chinese New Year, but so far this year he's only had two.
For last season or quarter, I can feel it's really slow, especially at the end of the year. The economy's really dropped and influence our F&B industry a lot.
It's a similar story for many businesses in China. They're feeling the squeeze from consumers tightening their belts. While the country's economic growth between October and December didn't get worse, it's still at its slowest rate in nearly 30 years.
When people face uncertainty, and people tend to be more conservative. You can see that many luxurious hotels, they have high vacancy, and many luxurious restaurants. There are also many empty tables.
Here's the problem though. Beijing's already introduced massive tax cuts and boosted spending on infrastructure to try to spur growth. But the economy has been slow to react and business confidence is shaky. This month, the People's Bank of China said it'll cut the amount of cash banks have to hold in reserve. The reduction will pump more money into the economy, but it's also the 8th cut ordered by the central bank since early 2018. Policymakers are expected to introduce more stimulus measures this year, but they're trying to avoid too much monetary easing, which in the past has led to a mountain of debt.
I think the key is for China is still how to really provide the right type of investment environment where businesses can really have their confidence in the policy. Consistency and transparency is really the key. It's not really the money that's the most important.
While its economy may be cooling, China's exports still rose for the first time in 5 months in December. Imports also beat expectations. Those figures came out just a day before Beijing and Washington signed what they're calling Phase 1 of a trade deal. It includes a rollback of some US tariffs in exchange for China buying more American goods. While the initial deal's an important step, Phase 2 is expected to touch on more thorny issues. Those include the support China gives to its state-owned enterprises, which the US says put competitors at a disadvantage. US tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese goods will stay in place for now, while levies slapped on US imports will also remain. That's bad news for businesses like Chen's, where American produce is popular. He's already had to pass on some additional costs to his customers, and with a deadly pig disease also raising Chinese pork prices, 2020 could serve up a meaty challenge. Samantha Vadas, TRT World, Beijing.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Saibal Dasgupta in Beijing. Welcome to the program, Saibal. Now, this is the weakest pace of growth in 29 years for China, but it could have been a lot worse given the ongoing trade war with the US. Do you think these latest GDP figures suggest that perhaps the worst is over for China?
Actually, the Economic Intelligence Agency is saying that the worst is over. It has peaked now and it will not go down anymore in 2020. But the basic problem with China is not just the trade war. The problem is low demand, low export demand, rising prices, and this mismatch has not been tackled by the Chinese government. The prices of wages, of rentals, of everything else is rising in China. So the magic of China, which was low cost production, is now evaporating. Is there a replacement that the government can bring about? Only technology can do it. And technological expansion is being inhabited by the trade war between the US. So the problem has not been tackled. The first phase of settlement is not going to solve it. There is a lot more to do before Chinese economy stabilizes.
Yeah, let's talk about that Phase 1 trade deal that the US and China signed on Wednesday in Washington, D.C. Now, one of the provisions in that agreement was that China has agreed to buy an additional $200 billion worth of US goods. How will that affect future growth in China? Is it something that China can afford?
You see, it's very difficult for China to afford entirely 200 billion worth of imports because it's going to affect local production. It is going to affect China's buying from many other countries. For example, China will be buying less pork and less beans from a variety of different countries. So relationship with Chinese other trade partners would be affected. China's own production lines would be affected within the domestic market. So it will have a lot of impact at different levels. And I'm not sure it will be able to retain the 6% growth rate next year. And you see the fall from 2018 6.6% growth to 6.1% growth is a very, very steep fall in economic terms. 5.5% fall in growth is a very, very dangerous growth for an economy, although people had expected it.
Okay, Saibal Dasgupta in Beijing. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you for that update.